Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robyn Hall, Publishing Director of Mortgage Introducer, and welcome to our live webinar in association with SimplyBiz Mortgages, where amongst other things, we'll be talking about understanding the opportunities in the directly authorised journey. To answer all the hard questions and deliver his insight into the current market and what opportunities are out there, I'm joined today by SimplyBiz Mortgages Chief Executive, Martin Reynolds. Joining Martin is Alastair McKee, Managing Director of 177 Mortgages, who's going to explain to us about his own DA experience from the support provided through to the challenges he faced along the way. Good afternoon to you both, and thank you for joining me.
Afternoon.
Hi. Now, as always, this is a live broadcast, and we will be doing our best amidst current conditions, and we'll be taking some live questions. If you do submit a question that is not answered, the team at Mortgage Introducer, along with our panelists, will seek to get it answered privately, if not on the Mortgage Introducer website itself. Now, whilst we are here to talk about the possibilities and opportunities with the directly authorised market, it would certainly be remiss of us not to talk about the wider market and the issues we're all facing today. So, to kick us off, Martin, how have you seen the market begin this year? How's January been for SimplyBiz and the group?
I think the feedback from the members that we've had is it's been a positive start. You know, the inquiries are still up. It's been a challenging start still of getting the pipeline through and everything that's already post-offering, you know, that cliff edge that is the 31st of March. So that's still high on everybody's agenda. But yeah, it's been very positive and people are buoyant. You know, we've obviously had lockdown 3. But the feedback we're getting is that members, their clients are calling in, they want advice, they want help, and they're still determined to move.
And Alastair, how's the start of the year been for 177? Have you faced many challenges?
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic, to be fair. I echo Martin's comments. You know, we probably had the busiest per head, you know, in terms of figures, you know, ever during January. So, but obviously, is it a cliff edge or is it going to continue? We'll have to wait and see. And that's obviously part and parcel of where we're looking at. Do we continue kind of, you know, growing and recruiting, or do we hold that off a little bit? But we'll have to wait and see. We'll see. We've got another month or so before we get to that point where we make a decision. So we'll see what happens.
And Alastair, have you seen some sections of the market that are working better than others? Maybe new build has had a better start than it would normally?
Yeah, new build's always been fairly buoyant right throughout the pandemic. And it still continues to be, even with all the Help to Buy changes that came in, you know, in December. So that's continued to be buoyant and really effective. The other part, surprisingly, there's been quite, all that's really picking up some pace now is bridging. On the bridging side, simply for chain breaks and bits and pieces like that, while people are getting a bit jittery as to whether or not they're going to meet the 31st of March deadline. So they're now starting to look into, you know, bridging as a chain break solution. So that's, yeah, surprisingly got quite busy on that side.
Speaking of the stamp duty deadline, Martin, are you getting much feedback, any concerns about those who could miss the stamp duty deadline? Alastair's alluded to bridging there as a chain breaking facility. Now the budget's on March the 3rd, and the stamp duty issue is going to get debated in the House of Commons on the 1st of February. What are your thoughts? Should it be extended, yes or no? And what general feedback have you had?
The feedback is, I think everybody's nervous. I think anybody who's sat in that chain is going to be nervous until they've got the completion date and they've got the removals firm booked, and probably even nervous until the day when they're actually in the van and moving, because, you know, obviously it can break down at any time, not necessarily because of the mortgage and that, but, you know, if somebody in that chain contracts COVID, unfortunately, then that stops it. So I think there's a general nervousness, full stop, about it. You know, I moved last year myself, and again, until I was actually in the next house, the new house, it didn't feel like we were actually going to do it. So I think you have got that. I think you have got that extra added dimension of stamp duty in the 31st of March, and obviously you've also got the end of the current Help to Buy scheme is also the 31st of March for completions to come through. So you've got that double whammy there. So I think people are very nervous. I think it's just trying to understand how many people aren't going to complete maybe in January and February, and what is the size of the issue or challenge that we're going to face in March as an industry, of how many completions are we going to get. It's understanding that. And I think you probably will see, as Alastair said, people looking at what's the option if there is a chain break. We're talking to members and advising them, you know, make sure that you're talking to your clients around this. Can they afford to pay anything up to £15,000 additional on that, or have they stretched? How are they going to be able to afford that, and try and understand what's happening in the chain as well, which is ultimately outside of your control, but there is that challenge. Whether it should be extended, it's a challenging one. I think, yes, it should, but it's around the detail and around the date. I think that the risk, if it's announced now that it's extended, is people will slow down in the transaction. So all you might be doing is pushing that cliff edge to a different date. So I think if we're going to see anything, it'll be 3rd of March. It'll be announced in the budget on the 3rd of March, because then, again, I think they'll know what's left in the pot for March and what the size of that challenging issue is. So I think that was there. So I think, yes, it should be. Will they do it? Maybe, or under the guise of something else. But it's one of those, isn't it, that it was launched as an economic stimulus to help the economy and help the housing market, and it's definitely done that from some of the figures that we've seen that came out today with December completions. Would the government want it to end in a whimper and recriminations? Probably not. But how they deal with it will be the interesting part.
Alastair, what are your thoughts on extension? Now, you just mentioned that bridging has seen an uptick with partly due to stamp duty deadline. Surely if that's extended, that's going to ease off a little bit. Do we just need to get this over and done with, or should we kick the can down the road furthermore?
Yeah, I think the government's damned if they do and damned if they don't. It's a bit like the tax changes that came in, the buy-to-let. There was a big rush towards the particular date that it was. So yeah, I think it's all about advisors and firms managing clients' expectations and just saying, look, you do realise you're close to the wire if you're applying now, or virtually impossible, because whilst we'll be able to do our part with mortgage offers and getting those out in plenty of time, we're confident with that. Trying to find a conveyancer at the moment that will take on the work and put a guarantee in place they'll get there. I don't think you'd find one in the UK at the moment. They're all kind of putting disclaimers here, there and everywhere that there's no guarantees and it's virtually impossible for them to be able to meet those deadlines now. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm sure some of the firms that charge a fortune, on legal fees, if you pay enough, you'll probably get there. But for the man in the street, I think it's pretty much a dead duck, I think. But we'll have to wait and see. And
Alastair, just sticking with going back to Help to Buy, Martin mentioned about the Help to Buy indeed coming to an end, or partly coming to an end on March 31st. So is that boosted your business at the beginning of this year, do you think?
Yeah, there was definitely some pent-up demand for that, mainly from developers that were, sorry, I'm trying to do kiddie care and this is at the same time. It was going so well. Hang on 2 seconds.
Come to me then, Robyn. I'll answer that one.
Yes, go on, Martin. So tell me a little bit more about the end of Help to Buy, or partly.
Well, the scheme actually came to a close at the tail end of last year anyway, as in for new applications to come into there. So it was ultimately that the new applications were there. The new scheme is either due to open shortly, is already open, but it was for completions on the old scheme have to be done by the end of March. So it was already set in stone before the actual government announcement with regards to stamp duty as well. So it's just brought the two together, which is not always helpful because it just puts additional pressure and added burden on everybody to do that, doesn't it?
And creates more of a sort of jam in the system, I guess. And it's certainly when it comes to conveyancers and getting those cases.
It's the challenge in the chain as well, isn't it? As well, potentially as well.
Okay. We'll probably come back to that a little bit later on, but now this is quite apt as well. So coronavirus has changed the working lives for everybody, as we've just seen with Alastair and his home working environment. After the global financial crisis, everyone talked about the new normal as the industry adjusted. But rather than the new normal, when do you expect the next normal to be, and what do you think it's going to look like?
I'll let Alastair answer that one.
Yeah, I think there's definitely still a novelty factor of everybody working from home at the moment, which I think will continue for a while yet. We put it out to some of our workforce about whether they wanted to be in the office or elsewhere. Working from home, and all bar two of them wanted to be in the office. So it just goes to show, I think there is still demand for that. Just depends how the business is set up, I guess, in the first place. But I think, give it 12 months, and I think that demand for social interaction and collaboration within an office environment is still going to be there. It'll probably pick up again.
Excellent. Yeah. No, I think there's a few challenges there. I think, that challenge within, it's across the industry. I think you'll see a lot of the broker market potentially will want to get back into the office, as Alastair said, for that collaborative, actual approach. I suppose it's then the wider bit of how the lenders will interact with the broker market. Will they send BDMs out as much? Will the advisor community want the BDMs? If the broker firms are maybe working on a rotation and not in the office as much, how do you actually interact? So again, I still think you'll see technology like this we're using now will become a greater factor. And I suppose for us as well is how we interact with lenders from a distributor point of view. Maybe we were having, bi-monthly meetings previously, face to face. Those might drop to quarterly meetings, of which 2 to 3 of them a year will be face to face, and maybe you'll have 2 to 3 of them will end up being like this remote, and maybe 1 to 1 face to face. So I think people will utilise it and say, do I need to be sitting on trains? Do I need to be sitting in cars for as many hours every week as I have been? Can I be more productive in my role by doing some more of it remotely? So I think you'll see that, and again, the office space aspect of it as well.
Certainly interesting times, and with Boris's announcement earlier to the Commons today that homeschooling is going to be taking place at least the 8th of March.
Yes.
There's lots to look forward to, no doubt. Now, moving on, today we do want to talk about why would advisors want to look at going directly authorised. Now, very simply, Martin, why should advisors consider going DA? What are the drivers?
Well, we talk to firms that come to us, obviously looking at wanting to go directly authorised, and we sort of talk to them as to what is it that's making them want to do that. For us, it's sometimes it's about expanding their reach and the reach of their companies. What they want to do. It's about, for them, giving them more control and choice in both sometimes the products that they offer. And maybe the areas that they advise in, and the authority to maybe even pass business to other parts of the market that they can't do where they currently are. And I think it's sort of sometimes the control over how they trade and their cash flow and what they want to do with it. And I think in a lot of instances, they want to do it because they feel that they can actually save money by going directly authorised.
Now, Alastair, you are directly authorised, but you never used to be.
No.
What were the main reasons that you decided to make the move, or had it always been the plan?
It'd always been a grand plan right from the get-go, but obviously you need to get to a critical mass to be able to kind of justify all the upheaval and there is additional costs. So I think there is a sweet spot in terms of critical mass and turnover and everything. Well, for us anyway. One of the main reasons we wanted to go on that journey was we just had more flexibility as a business. We could vet ourselves in terms of how we advertise for clients, as long as we were within the remits of the FCA and, disclosures and everything else. And there was lots of other, we wanted to run our own business rather than be dictated by somebody else. And we didn't want to fit into their box. We wanted to run our own, box in terms of choice of systems, choice of processes, et cetera, which, has been absolutely fantastic. It was the best thing we've ever done, going DA. So yeah, I definitely advocated on that front. One of the other reasons as well, I was always, having been through 2008, I was always a bit apprehensive about the strength of some networks, and if they obviously did go belly up, then they potentially take all those firms with them as well. So I was always apprehensive to get away from that kind of setup and be master of our own destiny in terms of, the funds are paid to us, they're not held by a network, and yeah, just made far more financial sense for us at that point in time.
So you felt moving DA gave you a little bit more sense of security in terms of, you are in control of your own destiny. You're not reliant on what else may fall down around
exactly.
you.
We weren't subject to somebody else making a cock up, for one of a better word. So if we mess it up, we mess it up. We're not subject to somebody else further up the chain doing that, or freezing funds or whatever it may be. So yeah. So we just felt more comfortable going down that route.
Now, Martin, you mentioned some of the key drivers, but what are the other benefits to being DA over being AR? And I know Alice has touched on some for him, but as an overview, what can you say, Martin? I
think the overview for me is probably a lot of the things that we say. It's about choice. It's about that choice that if the market changes, you can change when you want to adapt to the market. We're seeing we're seeing that on that area. We're seeing it where people say, sometimes change isn't as quick as they want, or they want to move into different product areas, and they can do that at their own pace. They've got the choice of technology. They can use the technology that they want to. It's that choice bit of each part of the chain, each part of their business model, and how they want to advise. The choice is theirs, and there's the support there to actually give them that backup to say and give them advice. But ultimately, it's their choice of how they run that business, in what way they run it, and at what margins they want to run it at.
Alastair, we've got a question from Ross Dissy. He wants to know, what was the critical mass point for you and your business?
For us, I'm trying to cast my mind back. So it was about four or so years ago that we did it, and I think we had about 30 staff at that point. And I'm not going to go into turnover, but obviously, turnover was fairly good. But there's no right or wrong. You could argue both ways financially, whether going DA versus AR is the best route. There's lots of bigger firms than us that are still ARs. Just suits them. For us, it didn't, and it worked out. Yeah, financially at the time, it was definitely a cost at the time for us, but long term, it paid dividends.
I think also, to me, Robyn, I don't think the critical mass you can work. There is that. I think sometimes we provide support to sole traders, to 2-3 man-bound firms, and firms with 40, 50, 60, 100 plus advisors. So I think the financials can work out however you want them to work out. I think it's the mindset of whether you want to be directly authorised or not that is the key bit. And I think if that's what you want to do and you believe that's the model that you want your business to run at, you can make it work.
Bonson, you mentioned about making things work. There must be some things that you can't do as a directly authorised advisor. There are limitations being an AR, aren't there? So are there any limitations if you're directly authorised?
Not that I'm aware of. I think as long as you're staying within the realms of the regulatory guidelines, then you can make that choice and you can deliver that service. There will be a cost to certain things. The wider you span, the greater your cost could be. But that would be the same whether you're within a network or whether you're directly authorised. So I would say there aren't really any restrictions that stop you doing anything apart from your own views, your own beliefs and your own desire, and staying within the regulatory framework.
Yeah, and I'd echo the same thoughts. It actually gave us opportunity within more of the market and a larger part of the market that we weren't able to touch or facilitate previously while we were an AR. So yeah, it's definitely helped us.
Alastair, I've got a question here from Stephen Morris. One of the concerns he's got with going DA is access to lenders such as HSBC, TSB and West Brom. He wants to know, did you have any issues when trying to re-register for those, for lenders in general, I guess specifically those when moving to DA?
Not really, no. Personally speaking, not for us, only because we had a good track record in terms of volumes prior to that. So once we did make the switch, those lenders were all quite keen to keep us on board and keep us introducing. So yeah, we did have conversations with them both prior to going. So yeah, so that worked out quite well. There was no real issues, and yeah, never looked back really.
I think, Robyn, you're right. There are a few lenders that have restricted distributions. I think it depends. I think it depends on your use. So I think if you had one of those lenders on your panel and then you moved away, then you can have the conversation as Alastair. But I think if you weren't really using them and didn't have that track record, then they're not going to give you that agency. I think that would be clear, and I think that's fair to say, because why would somebody do it if you're not using it? So I think it does depend on what your reach is, what you have, and sometimes the size, but in a lot of instances it's historic use of that lender whilst on the networks panel.
Okay, got some other questions we'll come back to shortly. I think I've got something here from Yemi Ejaye, sorry if that's not how you pronounce your name, but he wants to know, how did you find the authorization process, Alastair? Was it difficult, as people may have told you? And just to add to that, Mike Cole believes you're being a little bit too positive. There must be some negatives, he's saying.
Well, this is the FCA part that we'll come on to. So yeah, for us, it took us, I think it was about 11 months, or just shy of 12 months. It did take quite a long time. Partly that was our fault. As a business, we tried to do it alone. And some of the terminology that the FCA use and some of the requirements they have are very confusing, I think purposely confusing. So that didn't help us, and we got X number of months down the line before we then thought, actually, we need some help, which is when we contacted SimplyBiz, strangely, and they then held our hands on the way through. Had we have done that, we'd have probably got authorised a lot quicker. So lesson learned there. I'd say to anybody looking to do it, I'd definitely advocate getting some help, either SimplyBiz or other firms that do the same, because it will save you a lot of time, effort and energy. And then as long as you're meeting all the adequacy, capital adequacy rules, and, you've got a good track record, then, it should be a fairly straightforward affair. I think Martin and I were talking yesterday, and most authorisations are somewhere between 4 and 6 months. Is that right, Martin, at the moment?
Yeah, they're taking about between 4 and 6 months. There is a backlog at the FCA, so they're outside of their main service standards. So I think they aim to do it between 3 and 4 months. They're currently outside those service standards. But yeah, it is back to, I think, as Alastair says, you'd expect me to say that, but if you try to do it alone, it can be harder. But because it's going to be your first interaction with the regulator, and it is very sort of rules-driven, process-driven. So it can feel a little bit daunting like that. So working with a service provider, whether it's us or somebody else, we work with them, hundreds of times a year to get that through. So we understand the process that the regulator, we understand the language and the terminology. And so we can act as that middle person, as advisors do with customers to the lender, and sort of interpret what they want, and then actually put it back into English for the advice firm that's looking to do, to say, this is what the regulator's after. So we sort of understand what the regulator wants to look at, what the key bits that it's trying to do, and we help firms prepare their application so it's in the right format, very much like an advisor packages a case for the lender, to make sure that it's in the right position for the lender to get the information easy that it needs. And I think if you can do that, and it's a straightforward, mortgage and protection business, it's normally fairly straightforward. The key bit and the normal waste is waiting for the regulator to actually give you a case manager to start looking at the case. But once you get to that point, it's not too bad. But my view at that point is that gives you the time then to actually work out from a business point of view how you're going to do it, how you're going to talk to your network, what's your process, what you want your business to look like when you go directly authorised. Because I think sometimes if it happens too quickly, you might not be actually ready and prepared to go DA at that point, and so campaign it yourself. So actually, we always say, use that time to work out who you're going to use, what services you're going to take from who, and how you're going to base your business model moving forward.
And
okay, go on, Alastair.
Sorry to jump in. I'd also expand on that. You definitely 100% you need a plan in terms of how you're going to attack it and timelines. The first one that everybody's done, including myself and our firm, when you sign up to a network in the first place, you're just eager to get going, eager to get things going. So you kind of sign the contract. You do read it, but not in enough detail in terms of the downside, in terms of the exit, or what you've got to plan for on the exit when you're exiting the network. And that's what you've got to be very careful of. Definitely get some legal advice on your strategy in terms of how you're going to approach that, because some networks in there, I'm led to believe, the clients are kind of owned by them, so it needs to be very succinct in terms of how that is, how you get that data, how you extract that data from the network over to your new systems that you've chosen. Again, lots of due diligence went into which systems we were going to run with and how we were going to work it. And the most important thing that could probably make or break firms, I think, moving away from a network to a DA, is cash flow. So my understanding is most AR contracts will, when you hand your notice in, they will freeze your pipeline until you've novated away most of your life clawback liability. So you definitely need a cash reserve or some sort of options should that happen, because most businesses will have staff to pay or bills to pay continuing, but you may not have any revenue coming in for maybe 2, 3, 4 months, depending on how quickly you can novate those potential clawback liabilities away. So that was the biggest thing that I would definitely say. Financial wise, you need to have a really good and really strong, robust plan on that front to be able to make that change. That was us. Obviously, we were a growing business, so cash was king for us to be able to do that. Without that, we'd have been fairly snookered on that front.
Yeah, I think that was a question that's coming from Daniel Light, who was wondering whether you experienced any issues when leaving your network, for example, where commission's frozen for a while, which that could happen, couldn't it? So
yeah, it does happen.
Moving on, Martin, there are a lot of myths around becoming DA versus AR. Should we try and get through some of them? We've had a couple of questions that relate to some of the common ones. Let's go with Stephen Morris here. He's interested in how you found getting professional indemnity cover. Now, for Stephen, he currently writes business with international lenders for foreign nationals and expats that we believe might come tricky in the future. So, Martin, is it difficult to get PI cover?
No, it is available. It is there. There are a number of providers in the market. It's more challenging than it was 12 months ago and 2 years ago, but it is not just in the mortgage PR market. It's the PR market as a whole, whether it's IFA, whether it's surveying, valuations, conveyancing. The whole PI market is a little trickier than it was, but there are enough providers out there to offer that. I think, again, it will depend on your business model as to the costing of that. I think it's just about, back to, as Alastair, it's all about that planning. So planning to move out, it's planning and having a good understanding of getting ready for your PI and having the right information and using the right broker. So we offer that service for them, and others do as well. But there are also some very reputable brokers in the market who can do that for you. And we are finding PI for all our mortgage firms.
Alastair, how is your experience with PI cover? Because I know there is a big issue for a lot of brokers at the moment.
Yeah, to be honest, we haven't really had an issue. I mean, obviously the market has contracted a little bit, as Martin said, but there's still healthy competition out there. We actually, strangely, we made a saving between our PI cover that we were charged by the network versus what we're paying today. So yeah, there's definitely some positives out there on that side of it.
Now, Martin, one of the other myths is you cannot access the best technology, or cannot get access to the best technology. And David Phillips wants to know, Alastair, what systems did you decide to take when you went DA?
So we decided to use Mortgage Keeper and TriGold, but you know that's a complete myth, because as an independent firm under a DA setup, you can choose whoever you want. So you know, you can beauty parade. There's lots of off-the-shelf packages out there for CRM systems. You can look at them all, decide on which one's going to best suit your business and sales process, and then select that particular one. The only thing I would say is just be careful. Obviously, extracting data from one system to another, in my experience, having done it, is never easy. So you've got to be very robust in terms of how that data is transferred and make sure there's no data loss or corruption, because that could obviously scupper your business. They're all your existing clients and client backbook. But in terms of, the actual systems, you can use whoever you want. And as long as it suits your business, it's your choice.
I think that's the point, isn't it? I think technology, most of the technology providers in the market are not owned by somebody else. So yeah, there are a couple of networks that have their own proprietary technology. So obviously, if you leave one of those, you don't get access to that technology. But in most instances, you know, your TriGold's 27 Tech and Mortgage Brain, they're independent companies, so you can go to them direct or through service providers who will probably have contracts and deals there. And then, you know, you've got the Key, you've got Mortgage Keeper, you've got Smarter 365, you've got 360.net, and many more that they're out there that are independent companies that will want to deal with you. So, you know, you will have the access to virtually the whole market of technology for you to choose what best fits the way you want to run your business. It's back to that point, is all those systems have good things, but they all work in slightly different ways. So it's maybe having that choice of choosing the one that works best for the way that you want to run your business and you want to run your sales process. And again, there's normally support and guidance from service providers and mortgage clubs who can help you through that maze.
Let's move on to another one of the big myths out there. You'll be on your own with no support. Now, Martin, you can't tell me SimplyBiz doesn't give support, surely?
Well, that's obviously key part of one of our roles, so you'd expect me to say that. But no, there's a number of support providers out there, so you get the support that you want. So a support provider is not there to look over your shoulder and tell you you're doing something wrong or pick up anything. They're there to give you guidance and support and to tell you what you need and how you can do it, you know, whether that's guidance on templates, guidance on regulatory matters, help with Gabriel reports, things like that. So the support's there as much or as little as you want it to be. But ultimately, it's guidance. So, you know, you can talk to a firm and say, this is what I'm looking to do, this is my process, and that firm will give you guidance to say, yes, you can do that, that fits within the regulatory framework, or you might want to put this additional controls in that might help you, that might support you, that might protect you and your clients and give you better outcomes, or actually it doesn't fit, but if you do this, it will fit. So that guidance there is there for as much as you want it, and there's many companies in the market that will provide that support.
Right. Alastair, in terms of the support you've found available, is that all ring true?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, this all comes back to the plan prior to making the jump. As long as you've got a plan in place in terms of how you're going to approach that, say compliance aspects, and various other, things like case checks, etc. We had a plan and we had internal, infrastructure we were able to do that with. We were quite lucky, but we did look into, outsourcing. There's lots of firms, virtually every possible part these days you can outsource for your business. So you just need to check and make sure that they, fit your business properly and that the costs aren't prohibitive. But yeah, for us, we just went everything in-house. It made more sense for us. We had the skill set, but that's definitely part that you need to factor into your plan before you make the jump.
Okay, another myth that we've kind of touched on, but lenders do prefer the AR model to the DA model. Now, we mentioned some lenders before, it might be difficult registering with, and I'd be interested to know whether proc fees differ as well. We have a point made by, I think it was, let me find it, I think it was Kevin, who wants to know, am I able to say whole of market if lenders like Accord, for instance, will not let me on the panel as I don't use them? So lenders prefer the AR model. Martin, what do you make of that?
No, that's not my experience of running a mortgage club and working for a number of mortgage clubs and being a lender at a couple of lenders previously. There are certain lenders, as we've touched on, that have restricted distribution models, but all of those are in the DA space to a certain extent, but not fully whole of market. We've got 70 plus lenders on our panel. That's not because there's only 70 that will deal with us. That's just the panel that we've created at the moment, and we're always looking to add new lenders on as and when we see things that fit the market or there's gaps in our proposition. So, that view is that, you talk to most lenders, and as long as they're getting an application that fits their criteria, hits their scorecard if they have one, is correctly packaged, they don't mind where it comes from, and the quality that they get is the same. But as I say, yeah, we mentioned a few lenders earlier that, yeah, it might not let everybody in, but you can still class yourself as whole of market because you will be having most of those main lenders on your panel and a very long tail.
Alastair, in your experience, having sat on both sides of the fence, have you noticed any difference between being AR or DA when it comes to dealing with lenders?
No, absolutely none, to be fair. None that I can recall anyway. There may well be some, but none that I can recall that would hinder us on a day-to-day basis of business. We have access to the same, well, we actually probably have more access to more lenders now than we did when we were under a network previously. So the other thing as well that I think to touch on, obviously proc fees, everybody bangs on about proc fee differences. When you look at the proc fee sheets between AR and DA, there is a difference, but you've got to remember you've got to look at the net figures rather than the gross on those. And we found there's very little difference, but actually a lot of the other benefits actually paid off for us on that front financially.
Talking about access to lenders, Alastair, Suntok Sandhu wants to know if you've joined any mortgage clubs and which one do you feel works better with a DA firm? Sorry,
what was that last question?
Have you joined any mortgage clubs and which one do you feel works better with a DA firm?
Yeah, again, you've got free reign. It's your business, so it's your show that you can run. Again, it's just a case of talking to various ones and just finding out which one's going to fit your profile best. That's what we did. We spoke to several and then nailed our colours to the mast. And yeah, it's worked really well. And I think doing that's really important because, yeah, you can split them between various clubs, but you're not going to have the kind of force of having a lot of business go through one, and therefore you can get some help and assistance when you need it. Whereas if you've got lots of different clubs involved and you've got things spread out, you're not going to have that kind of volume that everybody's seeking.
So Alastair, after all the blood, sweat, and tears that you've been through, has it all been worth it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'd never go back. I think it's the best thing we've done as a business. Definitely gives us more autonomy, more control. It's opened up new segments of the market, lending market that we can access that we weren't able to. If anything, the quality of our business has also gone up because we're now in-house and looking at that in-house rather than having somebody else dictate to us about how we do things or what we should be doing, and then getting into an argument with them. So there's been every part of it has been a really good journey. The only part that was a bit of a sticking point for us was obviously the cash flow part at the start, knowing that our cash flow was going to be frozen for a number of months. So as long as you've got a good team with you and you can access that or you can novate that as quickly as possible, and you've got a good team that are on it. I think we did in about kind of 4 to 5 weeks, novated most of it, and then the other delays were various other bits and pieces that we had to tick boxes for. So definitely wouldn't look back. I know some firms have made the switch from DA to AR and back again. It's horses for courses really, and it may well be cost for some. It may well be people, they don't like being outside of that kind of safety net of a network, and therefore they want to go back into it. But for us, it worked wonders.
And Alastair, how have you found the regulatory reporting aspect and not having your appointed representative firm to fall back on? Again, it's a tricky old thing to get to grips with, especially the first few times you attack it. But once you've got your eye in terms of what everything means and the terminology, and obviously we use SimplyBiz to help us through on that. Again, they offer a great service that can help us get through that aspect of it. So, most of the time, even though we're fairly au fait with now with the Gabriel reporting, we'll still complete it ourselves, send it over to SimplyBiz for check-in, just to make sure we're on the right page, and then submit it at that point once we've got the green light. So yeah, you're not on your own at all. That bit is fairly complicated, but I'm sure once you've done it for a period of time, it becomes much easier. Martin, we've had a couple
of bits, if I could just jump back on a couple of those other questions first. Obviously, on the mortgage club point of view, which one to choose? Again, you've got that choice. There's probably half a dozen in the market, and we've all got the panels, but each club sort of got its uniqueness of the bits outside of the panels of how it wants to interact and its specialisms in certain areas. So I think it was Alastair said, find the club that sort of fits the type of model, the type of business that you want to do. Do you want help with growth training, etc.? Are you in a new build sectors? Just do that little bit of homework. And again, the point of, yes, some people do jump out of from AR to DA and jump back very quickly. People do sometimes find it's not for them, and fair play. I'd never say that everybody has to go DA. I think all I've said, and you've touched on it with those myths, is, it's back to that point. All I try and say is that let's get clear information out of what each market does, what each network does, because they all have different types of propositions. What do all the, the DA suppliers and people do and offer, and just get that clear, transparent information out, rather than trying to say, well, if you go there, it's not going to work. If you go here, it's not going to work. Just leave it down to the individual advisor by giving them the transparent information and advice of how each side works, and then let them choose what works best for their business, because some businesses will never go DA and they think that the AR model will fit them perfectly. And if they're happy there, good luck to them. That's what makes their business work. But some people want the DA and they just need to know that their help and support's there. And if they do and they don't like it, they can go back to the AR network, because they know how that works as well. But at least they've made that decision based on facts and transparency.
Yeah, and the only thing that I just jump in there on as well is that everyone's different. So some of them, in terms of cash is king for businesses to operate. In terms of cash flow, some of them pay daily, some of them pay weekly, some of them maybe monthly. So again, you need to work out, whilst getting paid daily is fantastic, for cash flow, obviously you then need the admin people to process that at the other end in your business. So is weekly or daily or monthly or whatever it is, you just need to analyse all of that and work out what's best for you.
Martin, we've had a couple of direct questions, I think, for SimplyBiz. Peter Thompson wants to know how much you charge firms for assisting them through the DA application. Would this differ between the size of firms? So say a firm of 30 advisors to a firm of maybe 5 to 7?
No, not at all. I think that would be for ongoing cost of support would be related to that. And currently, for us, we charge 1% of turnover of an ongoing basis with a cap and collar. There's a small monthly charge to help with the application, but that's it. there's other providers out there that run similar things or charge a one-off fee for doing that. So again, I would say contact us, have a chat with us, and look what else is in the market and make the comparisons. But we're always happy to sit with people and do that. And there's a calculator on our website that helps you work those fees through of what it will cost you now and moving forward. So you can then compare that with what you're currently paying with your network.
We have a question from Yi Wang, who says they've not been an AR for long and have not yet achieved competent advisor status. Do they need to get competent advisor status first before going DA?
Yes. Yeah, the regulator. There's a couple of things the regulator will look for. That they will look that you've been in the industry a while. I think it's either 2 or 3 years of writing mortgages that you've been doing that. And if you've been out of the industry again for a while and are coming back in, they're not necessarily going to sign you off as that person. So the opportunity is stay AR and wait until you get competent status and that experience, or join another DA firm and they can walk you through and help you get signed off CAS in the interim before you decide that you want to maybe reach out on your own.
Okay. Moving on, Andrew Duxbury from Excel Mortgages and Halsworth has been in touch. Now, we have covered some of the answers to his questions, but can you re-outline the DA journey in terms of timescales, costs and ongoing costs, as well as the admin required to report directly to the FCA? We have covered a lot of this already, Andrew, but he says networks like errors that the DA process and the journey is ultra hard, and they tend to focus on you'll be lucky if the FCA accept your application quick. What are the main reasons for being declined DA status by the FCA, especially for someone with no adverse credit history, no complaints in a 20-year advisory career? Martin, why would the FCA look to decline someone?
If you're just looking at why the FCA declined, there's another thing. We've just touched on the one, have you got the relevant experience, CAS status, etc.? How long have you been in the market? They will look if you've had, if you've been removed off a number of lenders panels. Again, they will want to understand and understand why that's happening, and that may be a reason why they won't authorise. And the other main one is non-disclosure. It is non-disclosure of something that maybe happened in the past, something adverse that may well have happened. And our view is always, always be open and honest, because just because something may have happened in the past doesn't preclude you necessarily from getting authorised. But if you don't disclose it and the regulator finds out of it while it's going through that process, then they will just automatically decline you, because that's not following one of the key competencies of being regulated, which is being open and transparent and honest and trustworthy. So it's doing that. I think what we'd say is that bit is it hard, is it easy? We've said that, get their experience, but anybody who's got a suitable level of experience, resource and a track record should be able to achieve it. It's just about being organised and planning and doing it in the right way. So it's just that key about getting the right preparation and being open and honest. And we'll be quite open and honest with somebody if we don't think that the information they tell us will get them authorised, we will tell them up front that we don't think it's actually the right thing for them to do to go directly authorised, and we'll either help them and give them advice of what they need to do before they consider it, or what their best options are. So, we're not just going to say to somebody, yeah, we'll take anybody on and try and get them through. We want to make sure that any firm that we help can get authorised.
And we've got a question that's just coming from Mike Cole. He wants to know whether I think he's talking about the regulator. Would they request a reference from the network, and when would they do that?
They do. Yeah, I'll let you go, Alastair.
Yeah, so that's obviously something you need to be aware of in terms of, it may well be listed in the contract, but I think casting our mind back, we asked them not to send the reference request until we'd already given notice, because obviously we didn't want any disruptions to cash flow or this, that and the other prior to us doing it officially. So that's another thing that you just got to consider, but they will request a reference.
So you can talk to them about when that reference is requested. So you're normally a long way down the process as to knowing whether you're going to be authorised before they'll go and ask for a reference, and they do come to you in advance to let you know that they're going for a reference, so you then have that choice to have that conversation.
And another question here, from Mike Cole again, can you apply to go DA and then give the network notice once you have authorisation approved? That wouldn't work, would it, surely?
Yeah, that's what most people do. Most people will start going towards the authorisation process, and when they're a certain way down, because again, it'll depend on your contract. If you've got to give 3 months notice, once you've got an idea of when you're going to be authorised, you might then want to give that notice so that it coincides with the date that you become authorised. But from the date that you've got your authorisation, you've got a period when you can activate that authorisation anyway, which again you will depend against your sort of notice periods at the network. But you don't have to tell the network at the time that you start the authorisation process.
Okay, and finally, I think as we're sort of drawing to a close, Daniel Light wants to know, what is the first practical step you would recommend taking to go directly authorised? What's the first logical thing to get the ball rolling? And really, from both of you, what advice would you give to get any advisor? Would you give any advisor now thinking, I want to go DA? What would you tell them to do?
Talk to people. Talk to advisors that have already gone through that journey, that have gone DA. Talk to a number of service providers about what they offer and can they put you in touch with any people that have gone DA. Talk to lenders. How do you find that? So I would say don't be shy in asking questions and you will get those answers. Get this back to what I said before, get the facts about the challenges, about the opportunities, about the positives, about the perceived negatives, and then make your decision about whether you think that's the right thing for you and your business to do. And if it is, start the journey. If it's not, know that you've actually checked it out and just carry on enjoying where you are.
And what advice would you give, Alastair?
Yeah, just fairly similar in terms of, it's all about that planning. Make sure you know your business inside out in terms of, cash flow, what your costs are, etc. under the network versus what your costs would be as going DA. Make sure you've got, funds in the bank to facilitate that entire change. And yeah, that would be about it. Sorry, I've been put off my stride by someone.
Not to worry about it. Well, that really does bring us to an end of this webinar, I think, unless you've got time for one quick question, Martin.
Yep.
And it's a question that's just going from a Daffy. I can't pronounce that surname, I'm afraid. It's a Pequeni, I think. What systems do you use to verify a client's ID? And how long does the novation process take?
The process for an ID is there are a number of systems on the market, as the same there were with sourcing systems and CRM systems. There's a number of ID verification systems on the market. We've done due diligence on one firm that we recommend, and I'm sure other sort of clubs and service providers will have their relationships as well. But again, it's back to the point that you have that choice. We can give guidance from our side of who we've done that to help you, but ultimately you'll have that choice. But there's a large number on there, and the novation point, I think it depends on what the size of your clawback liability could be, how much business you've got, and how quickly the providers are happy to novate that over. I think Alastair mentioned he got that done in 4 to 5 weeks, I think, earlier on. So
perfect. All right, thank you both very much. Well, that does bring us to an end to this special mortgage introducer webinar in association with SimplyBiz Mortgages. Thank you both, Martin and Alastair, and thank you for watching. You can watch this broadcast again via various social media and also on the Mortgage Introducer website, which can be found at www.mortgageintroducer.com. I'm Robyn Hall, Publishing Director of Mortgage Introducer. Thank you for watching. Keep well, stay alert, and stay safe. Goodbye.
Thanks.